Today on Exploring Through Our Lens, we found a city that has been buried underwater for over 60 years.
And we also found an area that is history disappearing before our eyes.
We are sitting here in front of our campsite at beautiful Lake Mead. This is just a gorgeous, gorgeous place to be.
It is. The campground is so amazing. It's just, we're out in the middle of the desert, but the campground has a lot of beautiful trees around it and all kinds of wildlife.
You know, in episode 4 of our TV show in Las Vegas, we went on the helicopters, Grand Canyon, Papillon helicopter, and where we are sitting is right on their flight path. So they kind of keep coming by. So if we have a little helicopter noise, we're just going to keep going.
Right, absolutely, as well as cars and other things. But let's get into it, because this past week was just jam-packed.
It really, really was. You know, we found a lost city. And when I say a lost city, I'm saying this incredible city from the 1800s was completely underwater for over 60 years after they built the Boulder Hoover Dam, whatever you want to call it, the Boulder Dam. And it was just an amazing adventure.
Okay, so we have to dial back a little bit. We are sitting just a few miles, literally, from the Hoover Dam. So I'm pointing because it's on the other side of these mountains over here.
Right.
When the Hoover Dam was first built, it was called Boulder Dam.
Right.
So just to give a little background, the lake here that you see, like most of Lake Mead here, was not here. There was no water, pretty much no water here, except for the Colorado River, parts of the Colorado River
Right.
that ran out in the distance there. So just to give a little background here. So now let's talk about this city.
It was incredible. The name of the city was St. Thomas, and we're going to really talk about that and go into it pretty heavily on today's show. But that's not all we did.
No, as we drive in Lake Mead, there's a whole loop that goes around the lake. And as we keep driving in and out of here, there were buildings that I keep looking at. They just really piqued my curiosity. Every time I go by, I wondered what they were. And they just look like abandoned buildings, but I knew there was a story there. Each little section had its own air conditioner, and I just knew there was a story. It looked like they were rebuilding them, and we are going to talk more about that.
Yes, and you know, doing just a little bit of research, boy, did we uncover some gems there. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever gone to the store and when you're putting the groceries back in the car, you drop a dozen eggs? Well, that's exactly what we did this week, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we handled that difficult situation, not to mention having to move the RV several times, and we found a great new spot. We have a great new spot, but we did have some water tank issues this week, and we're going to talk a little bit about those as well as we continue with Exploring Through Our Lens. St. Thomas. Wow, what an adventure that was. So, you know, we had to travel, and as you look out between us here across the lake, believe it or not, it's about 45 to 50 miles to the other side of the lake.
Right.
So let's talk about traveling to St. Thomas.
But before we do, I just have to say that we've lived in the area for 3 years. We've been coming to Lake Mead for 2 years, and it's just really amazing. Just when we thought we've pretty much seen and explored everything, we are always surprised about what else there is. And St. Thomas, this lost town, which they're calling a ghost town, is one of those things that we're glad we took the time to go see.
You know, we did a little bit of research before we went out there, but we went to the visitor center and we found a woman there that was just incredible. I mean, she knew more about what's going on here, and there was a great ranger that helped us do all of these things. So what we did is we got in the car and we traveled to St. Thomas, and it was about a 45 to an hour drive.
Right.
Just around the outside of the lake. We never left the park.
Right.
And then we got there, and there was about a maybe 3.5 mile dirt road.
A bumpy dirt road.
A very, very bumpy dirt road. Now, we don't have a four-wheel drive. We have the Chevy HHR. We call it Explorer 2. And in Explorer 2, we ventured out, and so we made it okay. We were going like 5 miles an hour the whole way in and out. So then, we got there. There was only one other person there when we got to the end.
It was getting kind of almost a little on the late side. Sun was just about ready to set.
Right. The hike. Let's talk about the hike.
So 80 feet down, 85 feet down is what I had read. So it is a climb down, a little bit of a climb down. And I'm saying this because if you are thinking about going out there, just know that there is a climb down. Now, once you get to the bottom, smooth, easy loop that goes all around the town of St. Thomas. So that was easy to do. And that loop is about 2.5 miles. I find that when people talk about the mileage of a hike, you usually have to add a little on. So it said 2.5, but it was probably a little over 3. No big deal. And then the hike up is probably the most difficult part of this trip.
But I'll tell you, when we got to the bottom of the main trail and we hit to the first house, there was a sign there that talked about that first house. I think it was called the McAllister house. My heart started beating faster because all of a sudden, all of this history and all of these people's lives, it started to feel really real. When you see it on a YouTube video or you see it, in a book or on the internet, it's one thing. But when you're standing there in a house that somebody used to live in,
back in 1860, 1865, it really was, wow, is the best way to put it. You can see pieces of it, and we had done our research, so we knew what these structures looked like at the time. And again, wow is the best way to explain it.
Yeah, it really was like out of this world. And the Mormons built this town, and at that time they thought they were in Utah, and they probably were for where the lines of the states were at that time. But in the late 1800s, the United States, not the states themselves, the United States reallocated the states out, and it turns out that they were in Nevada. And Nevada at that time said, you know what? You've been in Nevada all this time. They want 5 years of back taxes. So the Mormons said,
we're out of here.
We're out of here.
So they left the town and they went back to Utah.
And they abandoned,
they
just abandoned
the town. But 5 years later, there were other settlers that came in and just, used the houses and the buildings that were already there. And they stayed for a good 30 years.
Yeah.
It was about 30 years. And then
before that, though, the reason I think that other settlers came to this abandoned town is because it was along what they called at the time the Arrowhead Trail.
Right.
And the Arrowhead Trail went from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City, and it was like the San Diego Freeway. Just, a lot of people go on that, and that's the only thing that they had. They were wagons and horseback, and so it was, it was the trail.
And I think when you hear about this story and you decide if you want to take this trip, you have to really go back and use your imagination. So dirt roads, there were wagons, as we said, and horses, and taking that trip back in those days, they needed to stop. So they'd stop at the general store and get the supplies they needed. And when you put yourself back in that or try to put yourself in that time frame, certainly I wasn't from that time, it really is an amazing, just thinking about it and thinking about what life would have been like.
One of the things that amazed Patti and I the most was the water system that they built, the irrigation system. They actually had a working vineyard there, and they had an irrigation system that went from the Colorado River throughout the whole community. And we looked down these wells that were all interconnected to each other. You know, Patti, that was just incredible.
Right, they were pretty much intact, so you could see where each house was. And remember, we're only seeing a small piece of what was left of the house, but the irrigation systems were still there, looked pretty much intact. And that was just crazy to think that they created this water system in this town.
Now, the other thing that Patti's been talking about it for the next 3 days after this happened is the air conditioning that they invented. It was really, really cool.
Right.
Talk about that.
So they didn't really refer to it as air conditioning, but it was about this tall, and it had on the bottom, it was filled with water, and it had on the bottom of each of the 4 legs a can that they used and filled with water. And what I read said that would keep the ants from getting in. The ants would not cross over the water. And then within this system, the water was used to either cool or heat. And I'm not exactly sure how it worked, but it just amazed me to think about 1865, around 1865, that this was created.
Yeah. Now I'm going to need some help with the name of this one, but I'm going to tell you a story that we told in the video. Now, we have a full produced video that is on our channel about St. Thomas and about our visit to St. Thomas. So if you want to go into big detail, we'll put the link up above, and it'll also be down in the description. But the story that I love the most is the very, very last resident. So when the Boulder Dam at that time, when it was starting to fill up, and they actually, like, you know, turned it on for the first time, it took 2 full years for the water line to get to St. Thomas. Now, when it got there, the very, very last resident, I'm sorry, Patti, help me with the name?
Hugh Lord.
Hugh Lord. So Hugh Lord was the very last resident there, and what he did is he stayed until the water came up over the crest of his front door, and from there, he burnt his house down, he lit it on fire, got on a boat, and sailed off into Lake Mead. I just thought that story was incredible.
I know that is your favorite story. And again, you know, going back just a little bit, the people in the town were informed that the water was coming. Supposedly the homes were bought, they were relocated. As a matter of fact, the cemetery was taken up and relocated, and you could go see it. So it was protected from the water.
Yes. So all of and the government actually bought their homes and they bought their businesses so they could relocate somewhere else. So if you're in the area and history is your thing, this is something that really, you know, it raised my pulse quite a bit. It really gave me that feeling in my chest of being there.
Absolutely. Looking at all the details, and you could see them, the way they built these structures. It's just hard to explain, it's hard to show on video, but it really, you know, if you could try and get yourself back and imagine what it was like during that time. Now, while St. Thomas is a piece of history that is being restored, the Lake Mead Lodge, which is also a piece of history, will be disappearing before our eyes. And we told this story in the beginning about how passing by these buildings just amazed me, and we found out they were the Las Vegas Lodge. And this was a place that, wow, it must have been so cool to be there.
Right.
People from Las Vegas would come out to the lodge because in this case, as the water came up, they built these lodges that made it waterfront. There was a pool there, there was a bar, and there was dancing and people having fun. And so this lodge was created for people to get out of Las Vegas and get away. And now the water is not quite as far up. The lodge has been shut down for a very long time, and we are told that they are going to tear it down. Piece of history disappearing.
Disappearing right before our eyes. Now, you said the Las Vegas Lodge. It's the Lake Mead Lodge.
The Lake Mead Lodge,
and it was,
yes.
Before that, it was called the Halapai Lodge when it was originally opened. And the government realized as Lake Mead started filling up that this was going to be quite the tourist attraction, and a lot of things were coming here. So that is why they built the lodge, and they actually had a third-party vendor come in and build it and operate it, so the National Park Service didn't have to do it at that time.
Right.
But
Tourism at that time just took off here at Lake Mead.
now, it became the favorite of all the headliners in Las Vegas. You know, people like Andy Williams, Don Rickles, you know, they all came out here. Johnny Carson came out here, and they had their cabins here. And at that time, I find this amazing too, the what they call the Boulder Marina, okay, was right in front of where the lodge is.
So we're pointing,
here.
the lodge
We're pointing
is
over here,
here.
so it's that way in the lake. Now, in the 80s, they had to relocate the marina because the water had gone down so much that they were having problems getting boats in and out. So they relocated the marina 3 miles that way, and it might be in the very, very corner of the shot over there. You can see some of the white stuff over there. But they had to relocate the marina 3 miles down, and that kind of put the lodge in a place where now it was difficult to get to the boats. They still had the pool, but there was a lot of things going on. But, you know, we did a full video on the lodge where we went up there and we took pictures of it, and there was actually one of the rooms, they have it all boarded up, but one of them somebody had pulled down the board, so we were able to see inside of there. So that was pretty cool as well.
It was. I mean, these cabins that just look like little simple cabins really had a lot in them.
Fireplaces, 2 levels, it had a little kitchenette.
Right. And you could watch the video above, or the link will be below in the description for that full video.
So again, you know, history is kind of the theme of this week. You know, both history coming back and history going away. So that was kind of the theme of some of the things that happened this week. Have you ever gone to the store and you're putting the stuff in the car and you pick up that weird container of eggs and drop it on the ground? Well, that's exactly what Patti and I did this week. And when we got back to the RV, we found that 6 of our 12 broken eggs, or 6 of our 12 eggs were broken.
Right. So what do you do? Now, I got to say, in the past, we would have been a little complainy, moany. It would have maybe messed with the day. And, you know, we've just kind of, this is about mindset. Let's just call it what it is. We've kind of changed our mindset over the last several years and just looked at things from a different angle. And when you can look at things differently and say, okay, there's 6 broken eggs, either you got to throw them away and go buy more, or to say, all right, what do we do? So
well,
what did you do?
Being the great YouTubers that we are, we
pulled out the camera.
The first thing we did is pull out the camera and started shooting. I went online and found a recipe for a quiche that used how many? 6 eggs. And no crust, because we didn't have anything to do the crust. So we were on our way. We were making all the cheese, putting it all together. We made the whole thing. We got it into the pie dish, and then we realized we don't have an oven. So there is a realization of RV life that, you know, we didn't have an oven. And we got pretty ingenious at that point, because the people that we bought our RV from threw in the grill. They're not going to be RVers anymore, so they left the grill on board, and we have a Next grill. The link will be below for it, and I got to tell you, it's the greatest thing in the world because it has a full top and there's a lot of room in there, and I was able to kind of hand figure out where 350 degrees was on the settings, so we built ourselves an oven out of our barbecue.
And we made the quiche, and the link for that is below, so you could check out the full video of it. But again, it's really about stopping, and sometimes you have to stop and say, oh, fill in the blank, and then take a breath and try and figure out what you're going to do, whether that's throwing away the broken eggs. I mean, they all could have been broken. So whether that's throwing away the broken eggs or coming up with a new, better, 2 quiches, or coming up with a better solution. So, you know, it really turned something that could have been annoying, bad, really turned it around.
And I want to say when we're talking about mindset and how we approach the day and how we approach things every day. I'm going to say 5 years ago in my life, that would have like put my whole day on tilt. It would have I would have carried it around all day. I would have been mad about it all day. And if you watch that video, you can hear that we're laughing through this whole thing. Patti is holding the camera, watching me make this quiche, and she's actually laughing at me from behind the camera.
When you see the camera, sometimes it is what it is, and I was laughing, and it just, there it is. So we have it to show you.
So my new saying is, next time you break 6 eggs, make a quiche. Well, here we are, and we made it through 2 full weeks of full-time RV life. You're still alive.
I am, and it wasn't without its challenges. Now, before we get into that, let me just say that, having this view, being here in this beautiful area, watching the birds, being able to take walks, it's just amazing. So I'm going to start with that. But there have been challenges this week, like not having water, not having hot water.
Well, let's talk about that. So we had a little challenge with water because when we bought the RV, it had been winterized and maybe even a little over-winterized. And we had to flush the tanks this week, and it takes a long time to flush the tank.
Well, let's just say winterized means that they put coolant, antifreeze in it. Is that what it is, antifreeze, in the tanks?
Right.
Just
and
so people know.
It's pink, so everything was coming out pink, and it wasn't clearing up.
And
but to flush the tanks here, we're in a national park, so there's no hookups where we are. It's almost like boondocking. There is a water spigot for every 4 or 5 campsites, but what we really needed to do was fill the tank up and then flush it out, and it takes about 2 to 3 hours to drain the tank all the way out. Patti even went to Costco and bought 4 gallons of vinegar, and again, this comes back to RV life. Here we are, and we're camping, and we're new to full-time RVing. I've camped and RV'd quite a bit in my life, but the people here are just incredible. It's like John, our neighbor across the hall, and when I say across the way, so he's right in front of ours. John and his wife are just a lovely couple. They're from Seattle. He worked for Boeing, I think, for most of his life, and they're now almost full-timers. They pretty much are out 3, 4, 5 months at a time. But the little things that he's taught me about this little knob and this little drain and all of these things to get this water situation taken care of, everybody, the people that have been RVing for a long, long time, everybody's really, really nice and very, very helpful.
Right, and the one thing that was interesting, because this is new for us, and one of the challenges, he is in the RV driving and I'm directing him. So if he's backing into the spot, I have to be able, it's really a lesson in communicating, and you've got to be able to communicate, because back up a little bit just doesn't cut it when you're driving a 40-foot RV into a 40-foot spot, right? So one of the things John said that I think has been one of the most important for me, he said to me, when you're outside and you're directing, you're the boss. And he said to Dan, and you have to listen and trust and believe her. So it really is a big lesson in communication. And I think we've done very well with that.
Yes. Now John uses cell phones, but I don't think he goes off grid as much as we do. I mean, we've already been stopped in places where there was no phone service.
Right.
So we got a set of walkie-talkies, and after we got over the how to work them properly phase, then they work really well now.
Right. User error.
But for those of you seasoned RVers, we did get the tank taken care of.
I get hot showers now.
We do get hot showers, so the hot water heater is working, the water pump is working, and the tank is not smelling. And now we don't drink the water, but it's okay to shower in it and that type of stuff. So we're really happy that we got through that. We moved sites this week. We got closer to the lake. because we weren't so dependent on water. So we were at a site that the water was right there. Now we're not dependent on the water anymore. So that was kind of
Right.
cool.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely. And it's just there's this. I mean, it's been 2 weeks, but so much has happened in 2 weeks. I mean, moving the RV in and out, and now that we have water, this is just a whole different way new experience for us.
yeah.
And I think the next step will be, so it's Sunday and a lot of people are leaving the park, and we are not quite on the front row yet. So I'm thinking that Dan's going to have us move again.
Yeah.
Now, every time we move the RV, whether it's to dump the tanks, whatever it is, everything inside has to be in its place. So nothing can be left on the countertops.
Right.
Everything has to be secure. I have 2 plants that hopefully will survive this, but they have to be set somewhere so they won't move around. So it really takes a lot. And organization has been one of the things I've been working on this week.
Yeah, so we have taken everything out of the cabinets and put it back in a different spot, maybe 2 or 3 times so far, but we're getting there on the organization side. I also want to talk about, one of the things, and it's still happening now. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, well, what about friends? You're leaving all your friends, you're going on the road. But I have to tell you, the people that we have met have been incredible. We talked about John and his wife, and I see him, out in the distance there. But he's got some friends that they just met at campsites, and now, like the group of them, there's 3.
6, yeah, 6 of them.
6 people, 3,
Couples.
RVs are traveling together, and in a couple days they're going to be leaving here and going to a site at the far other side of the lake. I just think that the friendships that you can make while you're traveling are just incredible.
Right. It's certainly different, but it is here. It's like you said, everybody is so friendly. People talk to each other.
Yep.
You can live in a neighborhood and never talk to your neighbor. So
Right.
it really is cool. Now, we are in Lake Mead, so we are only 20 minutes from the house we just moved out of. And yesterday we had a friend come and we had family. So our daughter Emily came and a good friend of ours, Jen, came, and we just sat around the fire.
Yeah.
We made s'mores. We probably ate way too many marshmallows.
By the time everybody was gone, I put the campfire out. I laid down on the bed and I said, oh my God, why did I eat that many marshmallows?
It was so good. And we were just, talking and sharing. And the atmosphere here lends itself to just being relaxed. And I say this a lot, it's hard to describe. It's just mellow and calm, and you could see what we look at every day,
Right.
all day. How can it not be?
Well, Jen, who came out yesterday, is also our health coach. And she got up at one point and went into the RV, I think to go to the bathroom or something. And she came out to the door and she said, I could get used to this lifestyle real quick. And it is a slower pace. It's I don't know. I feel alive. I really feel alive here. And speaking of that, you meet the really great people and then you meet some characters. and I just have to talk about Chris, who is in the spot a couple down from us. Sometimes people just really hit you well, and Chris is one of those guys that at first sight you would say, let me get away, because he's older and he's got a beard, but I'll tell you what, when you sit down and you listen to a story from somebody like this, he is a Vietnam veteran. He was in the Marine Corps, and evidently as a kid he got in a lot of trouble, so a judge sentenced him into the military, and he did 5 tours. He was shot 3 or 4 times and kept going back. Just an amazing individual. And I think that I'm a little more alive just sitting listening to his stories. And he's been such a help. He grew up Amish. And funny stories that he has, but he also can fix anything. And we're like working on the RV every day and doing little jobs and little things, and he came over and helped me for the afternoon, and You know, you just can't say enough about the people that have changed their world and now are living this way.
Absolutely, and there are so many people that you meet, and I think we talked about it in our last episode. There's a single woman who has her car and a tent, and she's been here longer than we have.
And it's getting
the
cold at
nights
night.
get chilly, it's windy, it was rainy for a couple days, and you know, you've got everybody from a young woman like that to
Yep.
the guy that was next to us before. He was in his 80s traveling around with 2 little dogs and
Yep.
just enjoying life. And I think that's the bottom line, and that's what it's about. And you just see the gamut of people. We met a woman that's in a car with her 2 kids, her husband, a dog. They have traveled from the East Coast here, and
Yep.
they have been in this. They pull out a tent, and she takes the table and she sets up a kitchen, and they've been doing it for months, and it doesn't look like they're going back anytime soon.
You know, it's funny because the story that she told, she said, you know, my son was studying the Grand Canyon on his online school, and she said, well, why don't we just get in the car and go to the Grand Canyon? And that's exactly what they did.
Right.
What a great story.
Yeah.
That, I mean, how inspiring is that? And these kids, you know, just great little kids. And, you know, we had gone to the Grand Canyon a couple weeks before, and he came running up to me. We were going up to dump the tanks yet again. And he came running up to the front, and he's stopping me in front of the thing. And I said, what do you need? He said, what's the link to that channel? What's the link so I can watch the Grand Canyon? So it just really felt so good.
Yes.
So 14 days on the road, 2 weeks, here we are, we're still alive. We are loving our new lifestyle. We are loving the people. We are loving everything, including having to fix the tanks.
Absolutely, because again, you look at it differently, and maybe that's the message of today's video, is how you look at things.
Yep. You know, and you say that. The next time you say to yourself, oh, I can't do that, ask yourself, is that true? Is it really true that you can't do that? Because we did. We picked up, sold everything that we own, and now we live in an RV. Well, guess what? We're going to bring our stories to you so you can live through us, but you can do it too. That being said, this is my incredible wife, Patti Hunt. I'm Dan Hunt. This is Exploring Through Our Lens, saying, have a great rest of today.
And an even better day tomorrow.